When justice wears a wedding ring, someone always pays the price. The mundane hum of another Tuesday evening shattered like glass against concrete the moment I turned onto Maple Street. 14 years of the identical commute had conditioned my body to decompress at this exact point, shoulders releasing their warehouse tension, jaw unclenching from another day of managing incompetent dock workers, mind shifting from supervisor mode to husband mode. But tonight, my quiet suburban sanctuary had transformed into a crime scene that would make prime-time television producers salivate. Emergency vehicles lined our pristine street like an invading army. Red and blue strobes painted our neighbors' manicured lawns in harsh, apocalyptic colors, while police radios crackled with coded urgency I couldn't decipher. An ambulance dominated the center of our usually serene cul-de-sac, its rear doors flung wide like mechanical wings, paramedics moving with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to human wreckage. And there, at the epicenter of this chaos, sat my house, our house, wrapped in yellow police tape like some grotesque Christmas present. What captured my attention with nauseating clarity was the luxury sedan engulfed in orange flames where visitors typically parked. A BMW, probably worth more than I earned in 2 years, was being consumed by fire while firefighters battled the inferno with industrial determination. Black smoke billowed into the darkening sky, carrying with it the acrid stench of melting leather and burning dreams. I parked in my driveway, muscle memory operating while my brain struggled to process this surreal theater. This had to be some nightmare mistake, some accident involving our neighbors that had simply spilled onto our property. Claire was probably inside, watching through our lace curtains, as bewildered and terrified as I was about to become. The uniformed officer stationed by our front gate approached with the measured gait of someone accustomed to delivering life-altering news. His hand rested casually on his service weapon, a detail that didn't escape my notice. "Sir, you need to maintain distance from the active crime scene." I fumbled for my wallet with trembling fingers. "This is my house. Jason Miller. I live here. What the hell happened? Is my wife okay?" He studied my driver's license with forensic intensity, comparing my face to the photograph multiple times as if expecting to catch me in some elaborate deception. "She's inside, sir. Detective Morrison will need to speak with you immediately." As he escorted me past the yellow tape, I caught a glimpse of the paramedics loading someone into the ambulance. A man, face bloodied beyond recognition, wearing what had once been an expensive suit now reduced to torn, crimson-stained fabric. I'd never seen him before in my life, yet something about this scene felt disturbingly familiar, like déjà vu with teeth. Detective Morrison materialized beside me with a sudden presence of smoke. A tired-looking woman in her 40s whose sharp eyes seemed to catalogue my every micro-expression for future reference. "Do you recognize this individual, Mr. Miller?" "No. Never seen him. Who is he? What happened here?" The questions tumbled out of me with desperate urgency. She deflected with professional expertise. "Where have you been this evening, sir?" The inquiry felt surreal, like being asked to prove my innocence of something I didn't even understand yet. "Work. Riverside Logistics. I manage the evening shift prep crew. Left at 6:30, same as always. There are cameras, time cards, witnesses." She scribbled in a small notebook without looking at me. "We'll need those details." Then she delivered the bombshell that would detonate my carefully constructed life. "Your wife claims this man was a friend who came by unexpectedly. Says someone attacked him outside your house and torched his car. Any idea who might want to send you a message like this?" The ground beneath my feet became unreliable. Claire had never mentioned having male friends I didn't know. In 12 years of marriage, she'd never had unexpected visitors of any kind. She was too compulsive about house cleanliness, too rigidly scheduled in her routines for spontaneous social encounters. "I don't understand. Claire doesn't have friends over without planning it days in advance. She's obsessively organized about social things." Detective Morrison's eyebrows rose with skeptical interest. "Obsessively organized. She likes to prepare elaborate meals, clean the house thoroughly, coordinate schedules. Having someone just drop by would cause her severe anxiety." Even as I explained this, I realized how strange it sounded, like I was describing a stranger instead of my wife. And you have no idea who might harbor a grudge against you? Anyone who might want to send you a message by attacking a visitor to your home. The implication struck me like ice water. They suspected me. They believed I'd come home, discovered some man at my house, and beaten him unconscious before torching his vehicle. The absurdity would have been laughable if not for the detective's completely serious expression and the growing weight of their suspicion. Detective, I've been at work since 2 this afternoon. I supervise 8 guys who can verify that. Time cards, security footage, probably 20 witnesses who saw me on the warehouse floor when this happened. She nodded, making additional notes. We'll verify all of that, naturally. Meanwhile, understand this is an active crime scene. We'll need to process the house and surrounding area thoroughly. Can I see Claire? For the first time, Morrison's expression softened marginally. She's pretty shaken up. Says she's never witnessed anything like this before. I followed her inside, past more officers photographing evidence and collecting samples. Our living room had been transformed into an interrogation station with notebooks and recording equipment spread across Claire's antique coffee table. The air reeked of smoke from the burning car outside, giving our home the atmosphere of a disaster zone. Claire sat on our couch wrapped in a police blanket, makeup streaked down her cheeks like war paint, hands trembling as she clutched a coffee cup with white-knuckled desperation. When she saw me, fresh tears began flowing with theatrical timing. Jason! Oh God, it was so horrible. I sat beside her instinctively, reaching out to provide comfort. But something in her posture made me pause. She was shaking, yes, but there was something else in her expression. Something that looked disturbingly like guilt mixed with relief. What happened, honey? Who was that man? She spoke too quickly, words tumbling over each other with suspicious haste. I don't know. I mean, he was just a friend. Someone I met at the gym. David something. He stopped by to see if we wanted to join his book club. A book club. Claire hadn't read anything longer than a magazine article in our entire relationship. The lie was so transparent it insulted my intelligence. Detective Morrison watched our interaction with the intensity of a hawk studying prey, taking notes about our body language, our word choices, the way Claire avoided eye contact when fabricating her story. The fire department has the car situation under control, Morrison announced. We'll need to keep the scene cordoned off overnight while forensics processes everything. Mr. Miller, you're free to enter your home, but understand you remain a person of interest in this investigation. Person of interest. The phrase echoed in my head like a death knell as the detective gathered her equipment. Outside, the ambulance was departing with its broken passenger while firefighters hosed down the smoldering skeleton of the luxury sedan. The front door closed behind the last officer at 11:30, leaving Claire and me alone in our house for the first time since the chaos began. The silence felt more oppressive than the earlier commotion. No radios crackling, no boots on hardwood floors, no authoritative voices discussing evidence and witness statements. Just my wife and me, and the elephant in the room that was growing more monstrous by the minute. Claire had shed the police blanket and was pacing between the kitchen and living room, wringing her hands and muttering sentence fragments like someone practicing for an audition. I can't believe this happened. Poor David. Who would do such a thing? David. She'd used his name multiple times now, each instance carrying a familiarity that contradicted her claim of barely knowing him. Sit down, Claire. We need to talk. She perched on the edge of our leather armchair, the one facing away from the couch. The first time I could remember her choosing not to sit beside me when we were alone. Tell me about David. I already told you. And the police. He's just someone from the gym who. What's his last name? The question hung in the air like smoke. Claire's mouth opened and closed soundlessly, her eyes darting toward the window where the burnt car's skeleton remained visible in the streetlight. Davidson. David Davidson. What gym? What? You've belonged to Fitness Plus for 3 years. I've picked you up there dozens of times. Which trainer is David? What classes does he teach? Her carefully maintained composure began crumbling like a house built on sand. He's not a trainer. He's just a member who... Claire. I leaned forward, keeping my voice level despite the volcanic rage building inside me. I've seen the credit card statements. You haven't been to the gym in 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked once and went quiet. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Claire's breathing became shallow and rapid, like she was hyperventilating. Jason, I can explain. Can you? Because I've been trying to understand this evening and nothing makes sense. A stranger shows up at our house driving a $60,000 BMW and gets beaten half to death in our driveway. His car gets torched. The police think I did it. And my wife claims she barely knows the victim. The words exploded out of her with desperate velocity. I don't know who hurt him. I was inside when it happened. I heard shouting and glass breaking, and when I looked out the window, David was on the ground and his car was on fire. I called 911 immediately. What was he doing here, Claire? She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly like a traumatized child. He wanted to talk about things. Personal things. The truth was there in the spaces between her words, in the way she couldn't meet my eyes, in the guilty slump of her shoulders. My wife, the woman I'd shared a bed with for 12 years, who knew how I liked my coffee and which side of the sink I preferred for shaving, had become a stranger living in our home. The rage that swept through me was clean and cold, like stepping into an Arctic wind. Not the hot, explosive anger of a moment, but something deeper and more permanent. A fundamental shift in how I saw Claire, our marriage, the last decade of my life. How long? Jason, please. How long have you been sleeping with him? Her face crumpled completely, tears flowing freely as the last of her lies fell away like autumn leaves. 6 months, but it didn't mean anything. It was just... I was lonely and you work so much and he made me feel. Get out. I stood up, my movements deliberate and controlled despite the emotional hurricane raging inside me. Get out of my sight. Go pack whatever you need for tonight. You're sleeping in the guest room. Jason, we can work through this. I made a mistake, but I love you. I choose you. David was just what, Claire? Just a mistake that required 6 months of lying to my face? Just a mistake that brought police to our door and made me a suspect in a violent crime. She reached for me desperately, her hands grasping at my sleeve like a drowning person clutching debris. Please, baby. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll never see him again. I'll do anything to make this right. I looked down at her hands on my arm, the same hands that had touched another man in our home, the same hands that had removed her wedding ring at some point and hastily replaced it before the police arrived. The evidence was there in the slight indentation on her finger, the tan line that didn't quite match. I'm calling Patricia in the morning, I said, referring to the lawyer who'd drafted our prenuptial agreement 12 years ago. I'm enforcing every clause of our prenup. You signed it, Claire. You agreed that infidelity would result in forfeiture of spousal support, division of assets, everything. The color drained from her face like water from a broken dam. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. She stood there swaying slightly, looking like she might collapse. Then, without another word, she walked upstairs. I heard her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers, closets, the sound of clothes being stuffed into luggage with frantic urgency. I remained in the living room, staring out at the charred remains of her lover's car. The police had covered it with a tarp, but the shape was unmistakable, a monument to the destruction of my marriage and the birth of my perfectly justified revenge. 20 minutes later, Claire came downstairs carrying an overnight bag and a pillow. She paused at the guest room door, looking back at me with red, swollen eyes. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, I replied with surgical precision. And now we both have to live with the consequences. The guest room door closed with a soft click that sounded like a coffin lid. Within minutes, I could hear her crying, deep, wrenching sobs that carried through the walls like a soundtrack to my vindication. I went upstairs to our bedroom, where the scent of her perfume still lingered on sheets that would soon be mine alone. For the first time in years, I had the entire king-size bed to myself. I lay on my back, hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling and thinking about logistics, divorce papers, asset protection, the security cameras at work that would clear me of any police suspicion. Down the hall, Claire's crying gradually subsided into hiccuping silence. And for the first time in months, I slept better than I had any right to. But what Claire didn't know, what the police would never discover, was that I hadn't driven straight home from work that Tuesday evening. I'd taken a careful detour, parking 4 blocks away and letting myself in through our basement door with practiced silence. I'd waited in the shadows, listening to them upstairs, building my rage like kindling for a fire that would consume everything she held dear. I'd followed David Davidson outside, the Louisville Slugger feeling perfectly balanced in my hands, the ski mask pulled down over my face. His surprise turning to terror as he realized what was happening. Each calculated blow designed for maximum pain without permanent disability. The gasoline from our lawnmower, the matches from our emergency kit, his BMW's leather interior catching fire with surprising ease. Then I'd driven around the block and returned home at exactly 6:47 p.m. to discover the scene, delivering an Oscar-worthy performance of confusion and concern as the police arrived. Justice, it turned out, was a dish best served with careful planning and an ironclad alibi. And as I drifted into the deep, dreamless sleep of a man with a clear conscience and perfectly protected assets, I couldn't help but smile at how perfectly everything had worked out. Some people might call it the perfect crime. I prefer to think of it as the perfect marriage, one where both parties finally got exactly what they deserved.